All right, 8. In today's lesson, we're going to try to apply some of the geography skill and information that we learned in our previous two lessons on how geographers view the world and the tools that they use to actually work with these lines of longitude and latitude. Today we're going to learn the skill and then apply the skill. Maps and globes are marked by lines and extended horizontally and vertically. Let's read about those and then get into our activity for today. Lines of latitude. The horizontal lines are called latitude lines or parallels because they are always equal distance apart. Remember, latitude is flatitude. The starting latitude line, which is 0 latitude, is the equator. Lines of latitude are labeled north or south to show whether they are north or south of the equator. The equator divides the globe into northern and southern hemispheres. Besides the equator, 4 other lines of latitude have significance because they mark the progress of the sun through the seasons. Because of the Earth's tilt, the sun does not shine directly on any latitude all year round. The equator is where the sun shines directly overhead on the equinoxes, or the first days of spring and fall. Pretty soon when we get to fall, we're going to be approaching one of those equinoxes. The Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. On the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, about June 21st, the sun shines directly overhead at 23.5 degrees north. This line of latitude is called the Tropic of Cancer. This day is the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere. They're opposites. So when it's the longest day of the year up here in the middle of June, that's summer for us. It's actually the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere. It's winter for them. This day is the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere. On the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, December 21st, the sun shines directly overhead at 23.5 degrees south at the Tropic of Capricorn. So when we get to December 21st, right before Christmas time, it's actually the shortest day of the year for us here in the north. It's the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere because when it's winter here in December, it is summer for them in that southern hemisphere. 2 other lines of latitude show the northernmost and southernmost extent of the sun. Locations that are on the north of the Arctic Circle at 66.5 degrees north and south of the Antarctic Circle at 66.5 degrees south. Experience at least one day a year when the sun never rises and at least one day a year when the sun never sets. See, as we get closer to each of the North Pole and the South Pole, depending on where the sun is in its rotation around the sun, either the North Pole is pointed at the sun, that'd be summertime for us. So in the North Pole, that longest day of the year, almost zero darkness, is going to be in the summertime for us. In the southern hemisphere, that winter time is the opposite for them, and that full long day is actually going to be when it is the middle of the winter for us. Lines of longitude. Longitudinal lines, also called meridians, run vertically north and south. They meet at 2 points, the North Pole and the South Pole, and are the farthest apart at the equator. The starting point, which is 0 degrees longitude, is called the prime meridian, runs through Greenwich, England. Longitude lines are labeled east or west to show whether they are east or west of the prime meridian. Now let's go ahead and practice this skill. Here's where you're going to take what we just read and apply by finding these different items on the map. The directions ask us, study the map below, then use the information in the passage on the previous page to identify lines of latitude and longitude. All right, looks like we've got letters A, B, C, D, E, and F, and we need to appropriately label those based on what was in our reading. Letter A looks like it's right up here towards the North Pole, and I believe one of the items that it talked about as towards the poles was the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. Now, the difference between those, the Arctic is always in the north and the Antarctic would be in the south. So for letter A, number 1, I would probably write Arctic Circle because it's referring to the North Pole. Here's our compass rose that indicates that north is in this upward location. Number 2, letter B. Letter B is located right here. And from the reading on our map, we know that that must be one of the latitude lines. So we've got a latitude line here, latitude line here. The ones that are going north and south, those are our longitudinal lines. Letter B, C, and D all together look like they're going to be our latitude lines. So let's look at what those were in that lines of latitude paragraph. Horizontal lines we're looking for are the equator and looks like the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Well, the equator we know is going to be the one right in the middle, so letter C is the equator. Letter B and D must be the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. Let's quickly read through those. Longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, about June 21st, the sun shines directly overhead, 23.5 degrees north. This line of latitude is called the Tropic of Cancer. So in the northern hemisphere, we have the Tropic of Cancer. Northern hemisphere, again, is north of the equator. So up here is the northern hemisphere. B would be the Tropic of Cancer. Therefore, letter D is going to be the Tropic of Capricorn by elimination. Or if we look at it, it's in the southern hemisphere. Two other lines of latitude showed northmost and southmost. No, we're right here. Southern hemisphere on the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, December 21st, the sun shines directly over the Tropic of Capricorn. All right. Tropic of Cancer is in the north. Tropic of Capricorn is in the south. Number 5 and 6, E and F, two letters yet to find. Letter E looks like it's down here in the bottom. That must again be the Antarctic Circle. And letter F, running through Greenwich, England, through the continent of Africa, down into Antarctica, that is going to be the prime meridian. Now, the last and final page that you have is for you to do on your own as your homework assignment. Here's the application of the skill. Go through the directions and give you a chance to work on this with some helpful tips. Use the world map and the information in the passage to answer the questions below. Number 1. Name 2 continents that have their longest days around December 21st. Number 2, which continents lie entirely in the northern hemisphere? There might be multiple answers for those. In the first one, it says name 2. In number 2, it says which continents. It's referring to a plural. You're probably going to need 3 answers for that. Number 3, when it is summer at the southern tip of South America, what season is it at the southern tip of Africa? If you look at both of those, southern tip of South America and southern tip of Africa, they're both in the southern hemisphere, so they're going to have the exact same season going on. You're just going to have to define when that is based on what it tells you in the question. Use the context of the question. Number 4, when is the longest day of the year in North America? The sun shines directly overhead on which line of latitude? When it is the longest day, I would use that clue as a way to go back in our reading and find where it talks about the longest day. Finish that up for your homework for today's lesson and get that ready to be turned in on Thursday. You don't have school on Friday, so enjoy Labor Day weekend. God's blessings.